Yes, another ship disaster, a shipwreck. Millions of dollars of worth goods are lost in the sea. But these goods can be compensated by way of insurance. On the other hand, according to the MIPA, the Marine Environmental Pollution Agency, so far, the worst environmental catastrophe ever faced by Sri Lanka is this disaster. So today, in my continuing video interviews on this coronavirus travel restricted period, I thought of discussing the legal ramifications of this ship disaster. What's next? What's next for the ship owners? How are we ever going to be compensated for this environmental disaster? Will we ever be compensated for this disaster? Who is actually liable? And do we, the most important question, do we have the legal framework or the legal facility, the ability to deal with this environmental disaster and bring people who are responsible for this to justice and compensate Sri Lanka for its environmental disaster? This is what we're going to talk in this interview. And for this, I thought I'll invite a specialist in the field. He's one of the foremost specialists in this area. That is Dr. Dan Malika Gunesekara. Dr. Dan has a master's in international law from the University of Utrecht, Netherlands. His PhD is on international commercial maritime law, and that's from the University of Hamburg, Germany. Dan is also a Max Planck scholar. He was the former executive director of Ceylon Shipping Corporation. He was also the former dean of the Faculty of Management, Humanities and Social Sciences at the CINEC Maritime campus. And a long resume of yours. Thank you for joining. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Chanakya, for inviting me for this very important discussion.
Yeah, let's get on. I know so many people are calling you. I saw lots of your voice clips and interviews across. So we thought of giving a full-scale idea to people about the situation. Now, I know your expertise in the law, but from what you gather, how did this happen, and why couldn't we, or why can't we still douse the fire?
Well, in first place, Chanakya, this is not an extraordinary type of an incident. These kinds of incidents do occur in different parts of the sea and the oceans quite frequently, I would say. But also there are many incidents that go without any record, that the authorities most of the time are quite successful in dousing the fires, whatever that occurs on board ships, So I remember when I was in the shipping corporation also, there was kind of a fire incident on board a cabin inside one of our local ships. So this is not a really a strange situation, it's a quite a common situation when it comes to maritime affairs. But however, looking at the catastrophes that we saw last year in Sri Lanka involving this the motor tanker New Diamond, as well as this year's now presently the motor vessel MV Express Pearl. So these are situations that have now become quite new scenarios for our country. But however, even in the past, we have seen several incidents of such nature that have occurred in our waters in the Indian Ocean that weren't that much of a mammoth character like this, or rather the last one, the New Diamond, and this one, the Express Pearl. Earlier, I remember there was an incident involving a Bangladeshi ship called Amnat Shah. That was, I think, way back in 2005 or 2006 period. And even that particular owner of the Bangladeshi vessel retained me as his counsel in that particular case. So, but however, that fire was a very small one. It wasn't a fire really, it was just a bunker oil discharge to our waters. Then there had been another one called Grand Bar, incident that happened off south of Gaul in the waters. It was a chemical one. It was a chemical one, and but that incident went scot-free really, with just a minimal type of a compensation being awarded to Sri Lankan authorities, the government, by the ship owners. But of a massive scale of this nature that occurred previously last year in the MV New Diamond and now presently with the Express Pearl are something that have now come into the face of our general public, and people are very, very concerned about.
Okay, so that is what I want to get into it. Now, what we understand as laymen is that we have a ship that is burning. Has the ship sunk so far? Has it sunk? No?
As far as now, if I can tell you, no, it is still no, it is still burning, and I think 95% of the ship is quite destroyed now.
Okay.
So it's only the structure right now remaining.
Yeah, what happens is now what we understand is the ship is burning, so it will probably burn up to the whole length of the ship, and then it will probably sink, break and sink like the Titanic. And what we know is that the ship's several containers have fallen off the ship, and they have toxic chemicals. Correct me if I'm wrong. 300 metric tons or something like that. Some chemicals, and there are other stuff, and that has some of it has washed ashore in some parts of the country, and the other stuff is in the sea, and these chemicals will be in the sea, and then the oil dispersed from the ship. Now, the damage, the destruction has been done. That's not my point. Now, given the fact that this whole thing happened, what are our, as Sri Lanka, what are our legal rights and our legal position? Because I think about an hour or two before this recording we started, we heard that the Marine Environmental Protection Authority, MEPA, lodged a complaint to the Colombo Harbour Police to take legal action against the captain of the engulfed ship and its parent company over the environmental damage. So what is going to legally happen now?
Now, let me tell you that if we keep whatever the actions that the government and the government authorities in Sri Lanka are going to take, because we don't know at the moment, there is no concrete decision taken by the government what sort of actions they are going to lodge into with regard to this situation. Yeah. But however, talking about this kind of a scenario and the subsequent calamity that we are now facing, you know, this particular ship is not a huge type of a container vessel, right? This is a very moderate type of a vessel that is used as kind of a ship for the purposes of transshipping cargo, like a kind of a tug or rather a feeder vessel, I would say, a feeder vessel that would feed between Sri Lanka and Singapore, right? And so by Singapore company, and it's not an old one. It's like 3 months old. It's a Chinese built ship. Now this is a ship that is fall into the category of a multi-purpose ship. Multi-purpose. That means they carry containers of various kinds of things, as well as sometimes maybe certain bulk cargo, whatever that they can carry, right? But now, if you look at these particular containers, there have been some number of containers that carry what we call the dangerous cargo, like DC they are called. And these are the ones that we term as chemicals that are inside. But not all the cargo that are on board this ship are chemicals. So they are not all entirely a dangerous cargo containing ship. It's only a part of the vessel that been used to carry certain DC containers. Now this particular exercise in itself is not legal. It's not illegal. I want to say not illegal, because this is a kind of a legal affair, legal carriage of goods. But there are certain restrictions that are being placed by international instruments such as MARPOL, for example, right? And likewise, there are certain measures that need to be taken in transporting these kinds of DC containers. So in this particular situation, we don't have a kind of real on-site investigation being conducted to see what is the cause of this particular fire. We don't have any evidence as to now, because no one can go on board, no one can do an investigation right now, no one can do a survey on this. So we need to have more time for the final reports to come. As of now, what we can see is that some of these chemical containers, they may have got caught to the fire. Some of the containers may have been jettisoned by the crew that was on board. I don't know, but maybe because it's a normal action again, jettisoning of certain cargo in order to prevent further fire in the ship. So some containers may have now approached the coastal areas, and these would be having chemical contaminated goods and containers. This is very toxic. That's why it's very dangerous for human health. Humans to touch even today's news, I saw some of the people who have touched the goods have got certain diseases or allergies or something like that already. That's why it's quite dangerous that they could be toxic, and we don't know what are there inside, because we need to go through the manifest and see what's there.
Yeah.
So for the moment, what I can say is that...
just to interrupt now, we know we are going to arrest the captain and some kind of a procedure is going on. Is there going to be, to your assessment, a big environmental disaster? And if so, can we claim damages, or do we claim it from the insurance, or do we have that legal capacity in Sri Lanka? Is the law properly in place in Sri Lanka to recover from the ship and ship owners the damages it would have caused to the environment? Now, like you said, the rest of it is a normal ship going, and it's going around the harbor. It's not an illegal affair. The fires can come, and then the authorities goes and douse the fire or not. That's a different cost they pay or something. I think last time also they paid. But environmental damage, if it is caused, are we in a position? Do we have the international and local legal instruments in place to get compensation?
Yeah, now, Chanakya, you asked several questions here. It's not one question. I see several parts or components in this question that you posed to me. Now, firstly, if you look at the type of damages that may cause, it's mainly two-folded, if I can see. That means that the damage caused by the chemicals that have been on board, and chemicals used to douse the fire. And that such damage may be caused to the marine environment. Marine environment includes not only the sea area, but also the beaches and the neighborhood, the livelihood, fishing industry. All these things might get affected. And on the other hand, when you look at the pollution damage, if now the ship breaks into two, and then the bunker oil, for example, on board the ship started to discharge, right? Then there will be much more damage that may occur to the said marine environment by the bunker oil. It is reported that there are about 300 tons of bunker oil on board. So if that is so, then the bunker oil will damage the coastlines and the marine environment. Again, the entire ecosystem. I'm not talking about only the sea or the land, but it also ecosystem include the air as well, right? So all these things can elevate in the coming days. So we have to wait and see what sort of, if we can save the ship from breaking, then of course we can save a lot of damage and risk that we might face in the coming time. Now wait. Then you're asking about the legal remedies. Now legal remedies, of course, I have been telling this right throughout for this country's administration, that our maritime law is not developed. We have so many international regulations produced by the International Maritime Organization. International Maritime Organization is the main watchdog of commercial shipping. And it has produced so many legal instruments, and Sri Lanka is not a party to implement most of those instruments. We are a party to several IMO instruments, but as a dual state, Sri Lanka is a dual state, a Commonwealth country. We need to incorporate our local laws in our local legal system.
You mean to say this
through the parliament.
Am I correct to say, just to understand, we have signed for the relevant conventions or whatever regarding maritime, maritime matters, but we are yet to ratify. Is that what you're saying?
We are yet to ratify, exactly, because we have to bring the national laws in place to do those things. I'm telling this everywhere as a maritime legal expert, that if we are to claim ourselves a maritime hub, we must bring these laws in place. Otherwise, how can we say that we are a maritime hub? We cannot. I mean, technically, we can't say that we are a maritime hub, and legally, we can't say that we are a maritime hub. So, I think some people don't like when I'm telling these things to the administration. That I always take my opportunity to tell that Sri Lanka is much more way behind the implementation of international legal regimes in the maritime area. Even the IMO found in its audit, the last audit that was conducted, I think around 2016, that our laws are not updated as of the International Maritime Organization.
Okay. So just to interrupt.
Now look at that.
Yeah, just to interrupt. You say we have not ratified. In the absence of that, because we have not ratified those any of those conventions, as you say, the relevant ones. If this damage, you say you hope that it will not sink and the oil also will not disperse. As it is, whether it sinks or not, is there a damage caused to the environment? Or if it sinks and if it creates further damage, are you telling me that we don't have legal capacity to get compensatory or any other damages for environmental pollution by these ships wrecked in Sri Lanka because we are not ratified? Is that the position in Sri Lanka?
The only two main laws that govern this area are the Merchant Shipping Act and the Marine Pollution Prevention Act number 35 of 2008, MPPA. Now, under MPPA, we can to a certain extent impose criminal liability and civil liability. But there are still legal gaps. Now, these are the things that I'm telling, that not having ratified most of these international legal regulations, we are running havoc. Now, when it comes to this kind of a scenario with regard to marine pollution, we are not a party to the HMS Convention, the Hazardous and Noxious Convention of 1996 and the subsequent protocol of 2002, right? So now this is a chemical disaster. So chemical disasters fall within the HMS Convention. When it comes to liability and compensation, obviously we are party to the MARPOL, and MARPOL give certain regulations that how these kinds of marine pollution are to be handled. But when it comes to liability, right, the main regime pertaining to chemical type of marine pollution is the HMS Convention. We are not a party. We have not even brought into being the chemical types of liabilities within the MPPA to a great extent. To a certain extent, yes, but that is not enough. This is what I'm telling, that there is a gap. There is a loophole that imposition of liability would penetrate through these gaps and the holes or loopholes, and thereby with a very minimal amount of compensation, anyone can go past.
Basically, just pay a small amount and go. Now, okay.
Yeah,
what about?
That's the thing,
okay, you say we are not signed, so we can't. So you are saying if we had signed, we can put cases in. I'm just harping on the same fact because this is the most important thing out of the ship. They will go away. The crew is safe. They will get insurance for what was on the board. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? The ship owners, and they will go away, right? They'll pay a fine to the arrested captain if it is arrested. But what you are saying is if we had those laws in place, which we have ratified those laws, what is the scenario? You have to go and file action in some international court or in the court of the ship's owner's company, or can we file action here and get it enforced in those countries against those companies?
We can file action in Sri Lanka. There is no problem in filing action in Sri Lanka.
But right? As it is, you said, no, the law is not ratified. So therefore, we need to say the total compensation we have to get, we can't get that because there's a lacuna in our law, and therefore we can't file action. Or are you saying we have some action?
Under the MPPA, we can sue in Sri Lanka. But what I'm saying is that we can't go to the maximum. One way is that there is a cap, there is a compensation cap as per the MPPA, and there are much more legal gaps in the MPPA because in the civil liability imposing provision in the MPPA, it deals with the oil pollution convention, the CLC convention, and not with regard to HMS. Because we are not a party to the HNS, right? And under the HNS, had we become a party to the HNS, we would have been much more benefited by the use of HNS fund. By the fund, we can get much more compensation from them. Now,
so what are the conventions we are part? What are the
in oil pollution damage, the fund convention we are party, but not with regard to these types of HNS.
What are the things we are not party to also? Now you said that we are party to several important ones, but we are not ratified. Then there are other important conventions we are not party to with regard to maritime business.
No, even the Bunker Oil Convention. Even the Bunker Oil Convention of 2001. Now, I mastered the Bunker Oil Convention. I have published a book on Bunker Oil Convention, how to impose liabilities under Bunker
Oil Convention. So we are not signed for that.
We have not signed, we have not ratified, we have not brought the local legislation, or even we have not brought the necessary provisions amending the MPPA. Now, I remember in 2016 or 17, I was in the government appointed panel to amend the MPPA, right? And it was convened by the foreign minister, and I was part of that. We recommended certain things, and after that, after our findings were given, even the cabinet didn't table it. No cabinet decision has been brought in to amend the MPPA. We wanted to amend the MPPA to suit. So this is what I'm saying, that we are at a very stale pace in bringing these laws in place in this country. So because of that, like I told you, that the amount of compensation that we can obtain is very minimal, and also there may be areas where a polluter, I would say, a polluter can be ship owner, whoever, a polluter can go away or go out of such liability because of certain lacunas, loopholes that are there in the law. There may be certain exceptions. I don't where the responsible party can very easily sometimes evade liability.
In the sum total of what you say, at the moment, there is some environmental pollution that has happened. Do you agree? Is that correct to say that? At the moment, ship has not sunk at the time of recording this interview, but there is environmental pollution happened. We'll say the environmental pollution happens to a great extent, like you explained earlier, by ship sinking and the oil coming out.
We can't say who is really responsible for environmental pollution.
Okay,
because there are a lot of doubts, there are a lot of gaps. Yeah, there are a lot of doubts, Chanakya, whether our authorities have acted properly, So
leave all that aside. Leave all that constant flip flop in this kind of thing with regard to passing the ball here and there. Leave that aside for the moment. But we'll say there's some damage caused now to the environment, and further damage might cause. We say whichever way there's a big damage cause or a small damage cause, given the existing law, can we get what we owe, but what we should get from them. I mean, the amount of damages to rectify that environmental damages, or will we fail in a civil suit?
Chanakya, it is all to be decided by the court of law, right? And we being lawyers, we know that for a court to arrive at a judgment to award or not to award damages, all depends on the evidences that are in place before the court, and also how the defenses and imposition of liabilities would be successful. To what extent? So then, it all depends on those things, and thereafter the court will take the decision whether to grant compensation or not to grant compensation, depending on the balance of probabilities of what we prove in court. So this is a kind of a futuristic thing. Anyone can say we are going to sue, we are going to take the compensation, we are going to take damages, whatever, right? Finally, it is the court that has to decide.
But we have law enough to invoke to file civil damages for this, no?
I don't say law enough.
Not enough.
Only to a certain extent.
What would be like that? We'll say, for example, the damages. The damages is so many millions of dollars worth we could have got. If that sense, given the present existing law, what percentage of the actual damage we could have got? What percentage will we get?
Now, anyway, Chanakya, in these maritime claims, there are what we call the limitation of liability.
Right.
Ship owner will not be absolutely liable, right? This is based on the strict liability concept, but the ship owner is not absolutely liable, since the ship owner is entitled to invoke limitation figures.
Right.
You have to invoke limitation.
Yeah.
So a ship owner will be able to invoke limitation in that case. So whatever, like you mentioned, we are asking for millions of dollars or rupees. It will always be subject to those limitations. So finally, we don't know. It will all depend on what the court will determine based on the subjective realization of evidence, right? What sort of damage would be awarded to our state and on the quantity based on such limitations also. So as far as I know now,
what is your advice?
MPPA, under MPPA, we do have provisions to impose liability, but that is not my problem. But the problem here is that since we do not have a very compatible legal structure, as I outlined, we are losing high time.
Right. What should we do immediately? Now there's action taken to, I think a police complaint has been lodged by the MEPA and to arrest the captain and all that. But what with the existing law, what do you suggest the authorities should do now to get at least what we can from them for environmental pollution and other things surrounding the ship wreckage? What should they start doing now?
Now, they can detain the crew. The Sri Lankan authorities might be thinking of detaining the crew. They can't arrest the crew. I will tell you, there is a provision where you cannot arrest in such a scenario, right? You cannot arrest the crew, right? But certain detention orders can be placed, like we saw even in the MV Diamond scenario also. The captain was not arrested, right? But he was detained, right, on detention, and then certain things can be implemented. Now, however, when it comes to the imposition of liability on the polluters, those who are bringing up the civil claim or the criminal charge have to be very specific, and the contents have to be very, very appropriate, right? So that's why you need some good maritime lawyers, right, to deal with them, right?
We all have you, right?
The subject of maritime law is not
it's an ocean itself.
Yes, so that's why we need more expertise. We need more expertise. I'm not talking about only the law, but also technical expertise to handle these kinds of things.
Do we have technical expertise enough in Sri Lanka?
we do have technical expertise, right, in Sri Lanka, but when it comes to pollution incidents of this nature with such exposures, I don't think that we have plenty.
Okay, one question. Can somebody, because I was discussing with certain other lawyers who would just take different public law matters, looking at it in a public law angle, is there a possibility in situations like this? Because if the there's one more thing is now, if the seabed is affected with this toxic, I think nitrate was there, right, and nitrogen, and then if the ship, if the fish and all that is affected, there is going to be people's daily income of fishermen is going to be affected. Things like that might happen. And is there a possibility? I mean, I know you're a lawyer, but you're not a scientific background. But to your knowledge, can this disaster cause a problem with regard to the fishing and for the fishing community?
Yes, of course, the fish will be affected. Fishing industry will face huge challenges in the coming months, and the fish could be toxic. Not only by the chemicals that have been carried on board, but also the chemicals that were put to the sea, to evaporate fire, right? That can also, that's what I'm saying, that it's very two-way, subjectively assessing is not that easy in this kind of an exercise. That's what I was telling about the evidence. Now, we have this NARA, right, that can take up research to conduct what sort of damage that have occurred to the fauna and flora in the waters, the marine environment, and then to have proper assessment. You can't just overnight make an assessment of this nature, in a case like this. It has to be very methodical, very organized, and also it will have some futuristic effects as well.
Okay, and you could say another Western Coast shipping, the seafood is going to be affected with that?
Yes, as you very correctly mentioned, I'm not a scientist, I'm only a lawyer, but we need to gather scientific evidence as to what kind of effect that can cause to the marine resources, especially the fish, what we eat, and our economy is quite very much dependent on the fishing industry. So we have to see and analyze what sort of economic damage that may happen apart from the biological type of damage, but also the economical damage that can happen to our country's economy.
Is there a possibility now, if the shipping community is going to be affected, that is the public that is going to be affected, other than the people who are involved in the ship and its business and agents and authorities, can they file a public interest litigation action in a situation like this?
Yes, there is possibility.
There is
possibility, but yeah, I mean, it's public litigation. If it's coming to public litigation, they must also address our scarcity of legal instruments and not being a party to international law. These are also things that have to be addressed. One should not look at one way of trying to impose liability upon the polluter, but also why this country took such a long time to bring in these laws. Now we are facing the problem here.
What are the thoughts that you'd like to leave with the people who are watching this, other than what you said?
I mean, outside
for professionals and authorities and everybody who's watching this, what are the thoughts you'd like to leave?
In the context of the law, what I can say is that we need to be in par with international law. We need to bring in develop international law in this country and implement them so that we are fully fledged maritime hub. We are not just a literal maritime hub. We must bring in these things. We are talking about port city. We need a port city with good maritime laws there, right? To have a very sound economy in this country. And out of the law, to the professionals and the general public, I would like to say that at this moment, we need to be quite cautious of the effects that may occur to the economy, especially the maritime related economy, fishing industry and so forth. Shipping industry will not that be affected with this, right? But the fishing industry, and then it's a natural fruit for us. So we have to be very careful in the coming days to wait until a green light is issued by institutions like NARA, having scientifically proved that the fish is edible and good to eat. So these are things that we need to be cautious of and look forward to see how we can cope with it.
Right. Dr. Dan Malika Gunesekara, a practitioner, teacher, and specialist in the law of international commercial maritime law. Thank you very much for your insightful thoughts today, and for educating us and educating the people who are going to watch this. And we'll wait and watch as to how the ball is going to roll in this issue. And thank you, Dr. Dan Malika, for joining us again today.
Thank you very much.
We hope people will take the cue from what you said and quickly ratify these laws, at least what we have already signed, so that in the future we will be at a legally more advantageous position, right?
Thank you very much, Malika,
yes,
and I'm very grateful that you convened this in a very short time, and you are putting this in YouTube and other media so that every single person in this country can see and be educated. This is a very good initiative by you and a kind of social service for this country.
Thank you, Dr. Dan Malika, once again, and I'll see you next time on another YouTube interview chat like this. Have a good week, stay safe, and practice the social distancing and other health guidelines issued by the authority, because we are still not over COVID. And I'll see you again sometime. Have a good day.